The alien ships appeared without warning on a cold morning in March. They came through tears in space itself. Hundreds of massive vessels that blocked out the sun across half the planet. People stopped in the streets and stared upward at the impossible sight. Children pointed from school windows. Workers left their offices to watch the sky turn dark with metal. The aliens called themselves the Zirathi Dominion. They broadcast their message in every human language simultaneously, their voices cold and mechanical through every screen and speaker on Earth. The message was simple. Humanity would surrender all their resources. They would become workers for the Dominion. They would obey, or they would die. The world's leaders gathered in emergency sessions. Some wanted to negotiate. Some wanted to fight. Some wanted to surrender immediately and hope for mercy. They argued for 3 days while the alien fleet waited in orbit, silent and patient like predators watching prey. On the third day, humanity gave their answer. Every nation spoke as one for the first time in history. They would not surrender. They would not become slaves. Earth was their home, and they would defend it. The Zirathi responded within an hour. Their first target was Luna Base, humanity's largest settlement beyond Earth. 300 people lived and worked there, scientists and engineers and their families. The alien weapons turned the entire base into vapor in seconds. Then they destroyed the orbital stations, the satellites, the early warning systems. Anything humanity had put into space was wiped away like dust, but they did not stop there. The Zirathi wanted Earth to understand what defiance would cost. They began burning the cities. The weapon beams came from orbit, lances of energy that struck without sound. The fire started in Shanghai first. The entire downtown district simply ignited. Buildings and streets and people all catching flame at once. The fire spread faster than anyone could run. 10 million people lived in that city. Most of them died in the first hour. Mumbai burned next. Then Lagos. Then Jakarta. The Zirathi moved across the planet, selecting the largest cities, the places where the most humans gathered. They did not use quick deaths. Their weapons were designed to burn, to cause maximum pain and terror. They wanted the survivors to beg for surrender. The young man watched it all from his family's farm, far from any major city. He sat with his parents and his little sister in front of the television as the news showed the horrors. The cameras captured everything before they melted. People running with their skin on fire. Buildings collapsing into infernos. Entire neighborhoods turning to ash. His sister was only 8 years old. She cried and asked why the aliens were hurting people. He had no answer. His mother held the girl close and wept. His father sat stone-faced, his hands gripping the chair arms so hard his knuckles turned white. The phone rang before dawn. It was the military calling the young man back to duty. All soldiers were being recalled immediately. He packed his bag while his family watched. His sister hugged him and made him promise to come home. He promised, though they both knew it might be a lie. His mother kissed his forehead like she did when he was small. His father shook his hand and said nothing, but his eyes said everything. The military base was chaos when he arrived. Thousands of soldiers rushed in every direction. Officers shouted orders. Trucks and equipment moved in strings. But underneath all the noise and movement, there was something else. Everyone had the same expression. The same hard look in their eyes. The same understanding that everything had changed forever. The base commander assembled everyone she could find in the main hangar. She was an old woman who had fought in 3 wars, but those wars had been human against human. This was different. She looked older than her years as she stood before them, her face lined with exhaustion and grief. She showed them pictures on the massive screen behind her. Before and after images of Earth's great cities. Beautiful places full of life and culture reduced to smoking craters. Parks where children played turned to ash. Hospitals and schools melted into slag. The death count kept rising on the screen. 50 million. 100 million. 200 million. The numbers climbed so high they stopped meaning anything. The commander's voice was rough when she spoke. She told them the Zirathi thought they had won. The aliens believed that by burning humanity's cities, by killing millions, they could force surrender. She said the Zirathi had made a terrible mistake. They think we'll bow down after this, she said. They think fear will make us obey. But they don't understand what they've done. They've given us something we'd almost forgotten. Something we spent centuries trying to remove from our nature. She paused and looked across the faces of the soldiers. Young and old, men and women, people from every nation and background. All united now by one thing. They've taught us how to hate again. The commander said. The word felt heavy in the air. Hate. It was something humanity had worked so hard to overcome. Wars had been fought over hate. Genocides committed because of hate. For generations, humans had tried to move past it, to see each other as one species, one family. And then the Zirathi came and burned that family alive. The commander continued speaking. She said they were going to kill every single alien who had participated in this attack. She did not care how long it took. She did not care what it cost. Even if they had to fight with primitive weapons, even if they had to build ships from scrap, even if it took 100 years, they would have revenge. Some might have called it madness. Some might have said revenge would not bring back the dead. But nobody in that hangar objected, because they had all seen the fires. They had all lost someone. They had all felt the moment, when grief turned into something colder and harder. The young man thought about his sister's friend who lived in Jakarta. He thought about his cousin who worked in Mumbai. He thought about the 300 million people who had died for no reason except that they refused to become slaves. The Zirathi had killed them all without mercy, without hesitation. Now humanity would return the favor. The aliens had been arrogant. They had fought 47 other species before humans. They had always won through overwhelming force and terror. Fear had always been enough to break resistance. They expected Earth to surrender within days once the burning began, but they had never encountered humans before. They did not know human history. They did not know about the wars humanity had fought against itself, the terrible things humans could do when they truly hated. They did not understand that by burning Earth cities, they had awakened something that should have stayed asleep. The commander dismissed them to their units. The young man walked out of the hangar with the others. Nobody spoke. There was nothing to say. They all knew what was coming. Most of them would die. Earth might fall completely. But the Zirathi would learn a lesson that would echo across the galaxy. You could conquer humans. You could defeat them in battle. You could even kill them. But if you burned their home and murdered their families, if you taught them to hate with their whole being, then you had created an enemy that would never stop, never forgive, never forget. The Zirathi had thought they were teaching humans fear. Instead, they were about to discover what humans became when fear turned into hate. They were about to learn why humanity's own history was written in blood. They were about to understand why, for thousands of years, humanity's greatest enemy had always been itself. Because when humans learned to hate, truly hate with every fiber of their being, they became the most dangerous thing in the universe. The young man looked up at the dark sky where the alien ships waited. They thought they had won. They thought Earth was finished. They were wrong. The fires burned for weeks after the initial attack. The Zirathi had reduced 50 of Earth's largest cities to ash and moved on, confident their demonstration of power was enough. They stopped the bombardment and sent down ground forces to begin organizing the survivors into work camps. The aliens expected broken people ready to obey. What they found was something else entirely. The woman crawled from the ruins of Tokyo on the fourth day after the fires finally died. She had been a structural engineer before the attack, designing earthquake-resistant buildings that could withstand any natural disaster. Those buildings had not been designed to withstand orbital weapons. She had survived only because she was deep in the subway system when the strike hit, checking support structures for the city's expansion project. When she emerged, Tokyo was gone. The city that had been home to 14 million people was now a wasteland of ash and twisted metal. The heat had been so intense that glass had melted and run like water. Steel beams had warped into strange shapes. Everything was black and gray and dead. She found 11 other survivors in the ruins that first day. By the end of the week, they had gathered 40 people. By the end of the month, 300 souls were living in the subway tunnels beneath the dead city. They had no weapons beyond tools and kitchen knives. They had no plan beyond surviving one more day. Then the Zerathi patrols arrived. The aliens walked on 3 legs and stood nearly 3 meters tall. Their armor was smooth and dark, covering them completely. They carried weapons that could burn a person to nothing in seconds. They moved through the ruins in groups of 3, scanning for survivors with devices that glowed blue in their clawed hands. The woman and her people watched the patrols for 2 weeks. They learned the patterns. The aliens came at the same times each day. They followed the same routes. They were efficient but predictable. And most importantly, they were arrogant. The Zerathi did not believe humans could pose any threat. That arrogance killed them. The attack happened in a collapsed subway tunnel. 3 aliens following their standard route. 20 humans waiting in the darkness with improvised weapons. The ambush was brutal and quick. The aliens got off a few shots, killing 2 people before the humans swarmed them. Knives found gaps in the armor. Heavy tools smashed through faceplates. Fire, humanity's oldest weapon, proved effective when poured through those gaps. 1 alien survived long enough to send a distress signal. The woman stood over it while it died and made sure it saw her face. She wanted the others to know. Earth's children were still alive. Earth's children were still fighting. The same scene played out across the planet. In the ashes of Mumbai, a former soldier organized survivors into proper military units. In the ruins of New York, teenagers who had lost their families learned to build bombs from fertilizer and fuel. In what remained of Snow Paulo, doctors who had once saved lives now studied captured aliens to learn how to kill them most efficiently. The Zerathi responded with predictable brutality. For every alien killed, they burned another sector of ruins. For every ambush, they executed 100 captured humans in public displays. They thought this would restore fear and break the resistance. They thought wrong. The scientist had been working at a government research facility in the mountains when the invasion began. She was one of Earth's leading experts in quantum physics, with awards and published papers and a comfortable life. Her husband and 2 children had been visiting relatives in Shanghai when the fires came. She never saw their bodies. There was nothing left to see. Now she worked in a deep bunker carved into solid rock beneath the Rocky Mountains. The facility had been built decades ago as a backup command center during the old nuclear standoff. 200 scientists had gathered there, each one driven by the same cold purpose. They were going to find a way to kill aliens. The problem was simple, but seemed impossible. Earth's weapons could not penetrate Zerathi shields. Earth's remaining ships, what few had not been destroyed in orbit, could not survive long enough to deliver any meaningful attack. The aliens had 500 warships against humanity's, 3 surviving battlecruisers and maybe 20 smaller vessels, but the scientist had found something interesting in the wreckage of a downed Zerathi fighter. The alien shields worked by creating a field that redirected attacks around the ship. The field required constant adjustment based on sensor readings. And those sensors could be overwhelmed. She worked 18 hours a day for 6 months. Failed experiments filled notebooks. Dangerous breakthroughs happened at 3 in the morning. Other scientists died in accidents when prototypes exploded. But slowly, piece by piece, she built a weapon that could disrupt the Zirathi shields. While she worked, the resistance grew stronger. Every captured piece of alien technology was studied and understood. Every prisoner was interrogated until they revealed weaknesses in ships, limitations of weapons, locations of command vessels. The Zirathi noticed too late that their easy conquest was turning into something else. The young man had been assigned to a guerrilla unit operating in the ruins of Los Angeles. His squad specialized in ambushing patrols and stealing equipment. They had lost half their people in the first month. He had watched his best friend die from plasma fire. He had killed his first alien with a pipe wrench when his gun jammed. Then his second with his bare hands. Then his third, fourth, fifth. He had stopped counting after 20 dots. Something had changed inside him. Before the invasion, he had been studying literature, thinking about becoming a teacher. He had written poetry and read novels and believed in the goodness of people. Now he could not remember the last time he had read anything except tactical manuals. Could not remember feeling anything except the cold satisfaction of killing another alien. But that was good. That was what Earth needed. Not poets or teachers or dreamers. Earth needed killers. It needed people who could look at impossible situations and still find ways to hurt the enemy. It needed people who had learned to hate so completely that nothing else mattered. Word came through the resistance networks after 6 months. The scientists had done it. They had built the weapon. Every remaining military commander was coordinating for one massive strike. Every soldier, every ship, every weapon. One chance to hurt the aliens badly enough to make them reconsider. The young man's squad received orders to attack the alien garrison in downtown Los Angeles. They were to draw as many occupation forces as possible away from the landing zones. It was a suicide mission. Everyone in the briefing knew it. Out of 30 people in the room, maybe 5 would survive to see the next day. Not one person refused. Not one person hesitated. They all remembered the burning cities. They remembered the murdered millions. They remembered what the Zirathi had done and understood that revenge was worth any price. The woman in Tokyo received similar orders. Her 300 survivors were to assault the alien command center while the garrison forces were drawn away. She looked at her people, these civilians who had become warriors, and felt something like pride. They had survived when the Zirathi expected them to die. They had fought when the aliens expected them to surrender. Now they would strike when the enemy least expected it. The attack was set for dawn on the 1-year anniversary of the invasion. Every resistance cell across the planet would activate simultaneously. It was humanity's last gamble with everything they had left. The young man cleaned his rifle and thought about his sister. She had been visiting their grandmother in Sydney when the fires came. Her last message had been 2 words. It hurts. He thought about those words every day. Thought about an 8-year-old girl dying in agony while aliens watched from orbit. The Zirathi had done that. Had burned a child alive and expected her brother to surrender. Tomorrow, they would learn what happened when you taught humans to hate. The attack began exactly at dawn. Across the entire planet, every surviving human military unit moved at once. 3 battlecruisers launched from hidden bases, accompanied by dozens of civilian ships armed with whatever weapons the resistance could build. 15,000 ground troops emerged from their hiding places to assault alien strongholds. And in orbit, something happened that the Zirathi could not explain. Their shields flickered and failed. The scientist's quantum disruptor worked exactly as designed. It flooded space with a specific signal that overloaded the Zirathi shield sensors. The protective fields did not collapse entirely, that became unreliable, flickering in and out of existence. A ship that had been invulnerable suddenly found projectiles slipping through it. Random intervals. Humanity did not waste the opportunity. The lead battlecruiser had been hiding near Jupiter for the entire year, its captain planning this moment every single day. Now, with enemy shields compromised, the massive ship unleashed everything. Railgun rounds traveling at tremendous speed punched through Zirithi hulls. Nuclear missiles, primitive compared to alien weapons, but devastating against unshielded targets, detonated among the invasion fleet. The civilian ships, knowing they would not survive, rammed damaged alien vessels at full speed. The Zirithi scrambled to respond. Warships that had been in standby mode activated their weapons. Point defense systems came online. But the aliens had grown comfortable over the past year, confident in their superiority. That comfort killed them. 36 enemy ships exploded in the first hour. 6 more took critical damage. The human fleet, though outmatched in every way, pressed the attack with absolute disregard for survival. Every ship that went down took at least one alien vessel with it. On the ground, the woman led her team through the ruins of Tokyo toward the alien command center. Most of the garrison had been pulled away to deal with other attacks, leaving only a skeleton crew to guard the base. 20 humans against 40 aliens. Impossible odds a year ago. But these were not the same humans who had cowered when the possible odds a year ago. But these were not the same humans who had cowered when the humans who had cowered when the same year ago. Invasion began. The battle lasted 15 minutes. The aliens had better weapons, better armor, better training. But the humans had something more important. They had learned to fight things 3 times their size. They had learned to exploit every weakness. And they had learned that when you have nothing left to lose, fear becomes irrelevant. The woman personally killed the Zirithi commander. She drove a salvaged plasma knife through the gap in his neck armor while he was distracted killing one of her teammates. As he died, she spoke to him in his own language, words learned through months of study. Remember us. When your people die, remember that humans did this. Remember that you should have left us alone. The command center's computers held everything the resistance needed. Fleet positions, supply routes, communication codes, and most importantly, the location of the Zirithi homeworld. The woman downloaded it all and transmitted the data to Resistance headquarters. Then her team set the charges that would destroy the building. She did not make it out before the explosion. None of her team did. But their sacrifice gave humanity the knowledge they needed to take the war to the enemy. The young man's mission in Los Angeles succeeded beyond anyone's expectations. His squad managed to draw the entire garrison of 300 aliens into pursuit. The aliens thought they were hunting down a small group of humans. Instead, they walked into a trap. The Resistance had spent months rigging downtown with explosives. The skeletal remains of skyscrapers became massive traps. When the aliens followed the humans into the kill zone, entire buildings collapsed on them. Those that survived found themselves facing human fighters who had been waiting in ambush. With stolen plasma weapons and improvised explosives, the young man killed 11 aliens before taking a plasma bolt to the chest. The pain was incredible, worse than anything he could have imagined. As he fell, bleeding and dying, he thought about his sister, about her voice saying, "It hurts," in that last message. Now he understood. Now he knew what she had felt. He hoped somehow she could see him now, see that he had made them pay for what they did to her. He died with a smile on his face. The space battle lasted 14 hours. When it finally ended, 200 Zirithi ships were destroyed or too damaged to fight. Every human battlecruiser was gone. Every civilian vessel had been lost. But the remaining aliens, seeing their fleet cut nearly in half by beings they had dismissed as primitives, made a decision. They retreated. The Zirathi fleet withdrew to the outer solar system to regroup and call for reinforcements. In their panic, they abandoned the ground forces still on Earth. Those troops, suddenly cut off from support and resupply, found themselves trapped on a planet full of very angry humans. The resistance showed them no mercy. It took 2 months to hunt down every single stranded alien. Some tried to surrender. Some tried to hide. Some fought to the last. It made no difference. The humans killed them all. Earth had won. Not the war, but the first real victory since the invasion began. The cost was terrible. Another 100,000 humans dead in the attack. Every battlecruiser gone. Half the remaining fighters killed in ground assaults. But the Zirathi had learned something they had not believed possible. Humans could hurt them. The scientist survived because her bunker was deep enough to withstand the Zirathi retaliatory strike. When they realized where the quantum disruptor had come from, they tried to destroy it with orbital bombardment. The mountain above was vaporized, but the facility remained intact. When she emerged weeks later, she found a planet still burning, but now with something it had not had in a year. Hope. The data from Tokyo told humanity everything. The location of the Zirathi homeworld, the positions of colony worlds, the weaknesses in their defenses, the fears that motivated them. Everything needed to turn defense into offense. The military commanders gathered in what remained of Geneva to review the intelligence. They looked at the star charts showing the Zirathi territory. 7 billion aliens on the homeworld. Dozens of colony worlds. An empire that had stood for 10,000 years. The vote was unanimous. "We will do to them what they did to us," the senior commander announced. "Every world they treasure, we will burn. Every city they love, we will reduce to ash. We will kill their children. We will make them understand what it means to face humans who have learned hate." Some objected. Some argued that genocide would make humanity no better than the aliens. But they were outvoted by people who remembered the burning cities, who remembered 300 million dead, who remembered children running with their clothes on fire. The Zirathi had taught humans how to hate. Now they would learn what happens when that lesson takes root. They would learn why humanity's own bloodiest wars had been against themselves. They would learn why, for millennia, humans had been their own worst enemy. Because when humans truly hated, when they dedicated themselves completely to vengeance, nothing in the universe could stop them. It took 15 years to build the fleet. 15 years of every surviving human dedicating their existence to a single purpose. Children who had hidden in basements while their cities burned grew up in shipyards instead of schools. Scientists who had once pursued knowledge for wonder now designed only weapons. Artists who had created beauty now engineered death. Earth transformed into something new. The burned cities were rebuilt, but not as places of culture or comfort. They became factories, production facilities that operated without stopping. The oceans were mined for rare materials. Forests were cleared for construction space. Every resource, every moment, every thought was directed toward the coming war. The Zirathi watched from their distant homeworld and convinced themselves they were safe. Yes, the humans had managed to drive off the invasion fleet, but surely they would not be foolish enough to attack the Dominion itself. The Zirathi had dozens of colony worlds, thousands of warships, and a civilization 10,000 years old. What could one wounded planet possibly do? They were about to learn. The human fleet launched in the 16th year after the invasion. 1,000 ships, built from nothing with a combination of stolen alien technology and human innovation. They were not as elegant as Zirathi vessels, not as advanced or efficient, but they were built by beings who remembered their burning world and wanted nothing more than to share that memory. The fleet commander was the old woman from that first speech, the one who had told her soldiers about hate. She was ancient now, kept alive by medication and sheer will. She had lost her entire family in the invasion, her children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, all burned to ash. All she had left was the promise she had made 16 years ago. Every single one. The fleet's first target was not the Zirathi homeworld. That would come later, as the final lesson. Instead, they struck at the outer colonies, the poorly defended worlds where civilians lived in peace, never expecting retribution for their empire's crimes. The colony on Zirathi 7 had 4 million inhabitants. They were farmers and artists and families. They had never participated in the invasion of Earth. Most had barely heard of humans. The fleet arrived in their system and broadcast a single message before opening fire. This is for Earth. The bombardment lasted 6 hours. The humans used every weapon they had spent 15 years perfecting. Kinetic strikes that shattered continents. Thermal weapons that boiled oceans. Biological agents designed specifically for Zirathi physiology. When it was done, the planet was dead. Not conquered. Not occupied. Just dead. And the fleet moved on to the next target. The Zirathi Empire mobilized everything it had. Fleets rushed to defend the colonies. But humanity had learned from their enemy. The humans did not fight fair battles or hold territory. They struck from ambush, using quantum jammers to blind sensors and cripple shields. When Zirathi warships arrived to defend the colony, they found it already burning and the human fleet gone, jumping to the next target. World after world felt afire. The Zirathi began to understand what they had created. Captured aliens, broken by human interrogators who had perfected techniques over 15 years, sent messages home. They are not trying to conquer us. They are trying to erase us. The scientist, now old but still working, had created weapons that would have been unthinkable before the invasion. Viruses tailored to Zirathi genetics. Devices that collapsed suns. Machines that turned entire planets into tombs. She had become what the war demanded. A younger researcher questioned her one day while reviewing designs for an atmospheric poison. Is this what we have become? Are we really going to kill billions of civilians? The scientist thought about her children, about their last moments as the fires took them, about how the Zirathi had listened to those screams and decided Earth should surrender. Yes, she said, we will kill all of them, because the galaxy needs to learn. You do not attack humanity. You do not burn our world, because we will never stop until you are gone. The war spread. Other species, the ones who had watched Earth burn without helping, now watched in horror as humanity demonstrated what hate looked like. Some tried to intervene, tried to broker peace. The humans destroyed their ships too, not with the same hatred they showed the Zirathi, but with cold efficiency. Anyone who helped the enemy was the enemy. 20 years after the invasion, the human fleet finally reached the Zirathi homeworld. The planet was heavily defended. Thousands of warships surrounded it. Orbital fortresses bristled with weapons. It was the most defended location in known space. The Zirathi thought it was impregnable. The battle lasted 3 days. The humans came in waves, not caring about losses, only about breaking through. Ships rammed orbital defenses. Pilots flew suicide runs into shield generators. Humans died by the thousands, but they kept coming, kept pushing forward with absolute determination. On the second day, the fleet broke through to bombardment range. The old commander, barely alive now, gave the order everyone had waited 16 years to hear. Burn it all. 7 billion Zirathi lived on the homeworld. They were not soldiers. They were families and children, civilians who had never wanted war. But they had lived comfortable lives while Earth died. They had benefited from the Empire, and now it was their turn. The bombardment exceeded what Earth had suffered. The humans had spent years designing weapons specifically for this moment. The fires could be seen from a light year away. The screams broadcast on every frequency reached across the star system. The old commander watched from her flagship. Her body was failing, finally giving up after years of medication keeping her alive. But she had lived long enough to see this. Long enough to watch the Zirithi homeworld burn the way Earth had burned. For the 300 million, she whispered as the planet below turned to fire. For the children, for everyone we lost. She died with a smile on her face, before the bombardment even finished. The war continued for another decade. Every Zirithi colony, every outpost, every ship. The humans hunted them systematically. Some escaped to the edges of known space. The humans let them go, but with a message. Tell everyone what happens when you make humans hate. Tell them about Earth. Tell them why you should never provoke us. By the time it ended, the Zirithi Empire was gone. 47 colony worlds burned. 7 billion civilians on the homeworld dead. Thousands of ships destroyed. An entire civilization erased from the galaxy. And humanity stood among the ashes, finally satisfied. But the cost was terrible. Humanity had won, but lost who they were in the process. The species that had once looked at the stars with wonder now viewed them with calculation. The people who had created art and music now created only weapons. They had survived, but at the cost of their soul. The young man never saw the end of the war. He died in Los Angeles in the first year, one of millions who gave everything. But his sacrifice, and the sacrifice of everyone who fought beside him, achieved what they wanted. Complete, total, absolute revenge. The galaxy learned from the Zirithi's mistake. A new rule emerged among spacefaring species. Never attack humanity. Never invade their worlds. Never make them remember what they are capable of when they hate. Earth rebuilt slowly. The fires went out. Survivors had children and taught them the history. Every child grew up knowing about the invasion, the burning, the hate that nearly consumed their species. And they remembered. Always remembered. So that if another species ever thought about attacking humanity, they would know what waited for them. They would know about the Zirithi. They would know what humans did to those who burned their world. Some species should be left alone. Some enemies once made can never be unmade. When you teach humans hate, you do not get to choose when the lesson ends.